Welcome to a Wild Mystery Podcast Appears, where we discuss mysteries, histories, and occasionally conspiracies. I'm your host, Ollie.
And I'm your co-host, Belle.
Today we will be discussing Bigfoot.
Pause for laughter. I don't know why I said that. Anyway, today's trigger warnings include conspiracies, attacks, evolution denial, and bad science.
I didn't know how else to phrase that, so...
I'm so excited that you're doing this episode because I cannot wait.
Yeah.
This is so fun for me. The opinions expressed in this podcast are the sole views and opinions of Belle and Ollie with a Wild Mystery Podcast Appears. These views are not intended to harm, offend, defame, slander, or negatively represent any individuals involved in a case.
This was a last-minute decision by me because the other one that I had fell through. I don't remember why, because it's been a roller coaster trying to get this episode together. Because for some reason, I thought to myself, this will be fast to research. But no.
Mistakes were made.
Yes, it's been like 48 entire hours. But, and that's only because I only had 48 hours. But anyway, so in the beginning.
Okay. Oh, Lord, here we go. Okay, it's going to be a great day. All right, I'm prepared.
In August of 1958, a road construction crew in California wrote to the Humboldt Times newspaper describing muddy footprints they discovered near Eureka, California, measuring 16 inches or 40.64 centimeters long. An article by Andrew Genzoli was published under the title, Giant Footprints Puzzle Residents Along Trinity River. Sorry.
Huh? Oh, no.
Did you have something?
No, I found it interesting that there was another, I wonder how many places named Eureka there are, because we have a Eureka, Alaska as well, which I love, by the way.
It's a good name.
Eureka.
For a place, yeah.
Plus, they have a good burger spot there. Yeah. I love Eureka.
So, some sources say that the person who discovered these footprints was Jerry Crew. Some say it was Ray Wallace. Some say they both did at different times. And some say it was just an entire crew. But either way, Jerry Crew and Ray Wallace are generally most often associated with this discovery. So Ray Wallace is the one that made the plaster casts of the prints, which are fairly popular amongst, believers. Genzoli thought that the letter was funny at first. He kind of joked about, looks like we've got our own abominable snowman. But he was surprised by the interest that
it garnered.
Yeah. So after that, he teamed up with fellow journalist Betty Allen and did some more digging.
Love her name.
Yeah.
Don't know why, but I really enjoy it.
It's a good journalist name. It's easy to remember.
Betty Allen.
Yeah. You can say it intensely. But, which I guess you can say most names intensely, but...
Yeah.
The Humboldt Times is the place that coined the term Bigfoot as it is used today, claiming that it is how the loggers referred to the creature. It was apparently, quote, a common nickname for particularly large, aggressive grizzly bears who ate cattle, sheep, and attacked humans, according to Popular Mechanic, before this. Originally, they used Bigfoot as two separate words, but then they combined the two because Genzoli felt that it looked better in print, which,
yeah,
fair enough. So interest in this creature blew up after this, obviously. Reports in newspapers traveled throughout the country. Many more loggers and locals reported sightings of this creature crossing roads at night, walking through woods or mountains, or digging for and eating ground squirrels, whatever people wanted to say. The TV show Truth or Consequence offered a reward of $1,000, which is a little over $10,000 today, to anyone who could prove the existence of Bigfoot. Trade paperback novels started to come out, always depicting the creature as male and, quote, a primal, dangerous creature out of the past who lurked in the modern wilderness. That is from the History Channel. Which, History Channel, what is you up to, by the way?
Right? Because it's like, you have that, you have the Qualapolic, like, they doing all this stuff. It's like, I'm sorry, what happened to, like, hello, history, fact, science?
This is really wild, though. By the 1970s, documentaries were coming out investigating Bigfoot's existence, and films were portraying him as a sexual predator.
No. That's okay.
In the 80s, though, Bigfoot became associated with wilderness preservation and environmentalism, which I think is a lot of kind of how we see it today.
Yeah.
The Humboldt Times articles, plural, launched the modern concept of Bigfoot in the US and Canada. However, when Wallace died in 2002 at 84 years old, one of his relatives found carved wooden feet that matched some of the casts, and his children announced that he had hoaxed the prince. He was known as a prankster when he was alive, but this does not always come up in sources.
Yeah, because when it doesn't fit the narrative, people tend to, I don't know, hide it.
Yeah.
Or ignore it.
This is what I'm talking about with bad science. So even Betty Allen, who was that other reporter, didn't think that the loggers she was speaking to really believed in Bigfoot, despite the fact that they blamed a lot of the vandalism on this creature.
Interesting.
By the way, I want to make it clear that I'm a big fan of Ray Wallace. The man, the myth, the legend.
What a guy.
Yeah. Because, you know, as much of this has come out and that everybody pretty much feels like this that sparked the interest is fake, you know, none of that has deterred the speculation.
Oh, and why would it?
Yeah.
Why would it ever possibly?
Mike Rugg, who is the owner of the Bigfoot Discovery Museum in the Santa Cruz Mountains, has been quoted saying, "Anybody that does any research into Sasquatch knows that they were seen for hundreds of years before Ray Wallace was born, and that they have continued to be seen since he died." End quote. So. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I think we're making it fairly clear where we stand on this.
I mean, you know what? Fuck. There's always
I live on a mountain.
Possibility. There's
I live
always a possibility.
on a mountain.
It's like, I'm sorry. I think we've had this conversation in a couple of the episodes that we do, but it's like, I don't know. I grew up in Alaska, and I've seen some weird shit. You don't talk about the weird shit, and you just kind of accept that there's some things that you just don't know, and that you won't ever know the answers to. While I think the likelihood that a Bigfoot does exist is small, I'm not gonna, like, completely knock it, but it's also just like, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I just think it's like, meh, whatever.
If it is proven to exist, sure, but it has not been, so.
Exactly. So it's just kind of like, meh, whatever. I think we've also discussed this before, I am more inclined to say that there's some shit in the ocean that we don't know about than there is stuff on the land that we don't know about.
Yeah. It will kind of get into some of that later.
Please tell me no one said that there's a Bigfoot of the ocean. I will.
Oh God, I hope not.
I will.
I didn't see that, but Jesus Christ, I hope not. So, this creature, as I think we all know, is known by many names, such as Bigfoot, Sasquatch, the Yeti, the skunk ape. Yeah. Okay,
that's a new one. I don't think I'd actually heard that one.
I had heard of it. I just didn't realize it was basically referring to the same creature.
Did not know that. Learn something new every day.
Anyway, some of these are used to refer to creatures in specific regions, such as the Yeti or abominable snowman being specific to the Himalayas, or the skunk ape being specific to swampy areas. The Russian version of this creature is called the Almas, but I think we've mentioned the different, like, more specifically local versions.
Mm-hmm.
So Bigfoot is also a cryptid. A cryptid being an animal that has not been scientifically proven or discovered.
Like Mothman.
Yeah. Cryptozoology is a pseudoscience, if that, dedicated to looking at these cryptids. Generally, Bigfoot is described as a furry, upright biped, more specifically as a large ape or hairy human between 7 to 15 feet or 2 to 4.6 meters tall, with long reddish-brown hair most often, but sometimes described as like black or brown. Its face is often described as a cross between a gorilla and a human. Some people say that there is no smell. Some people describe a strong, foul odor. They are said to make all sorts of noises, but often grunting and howling. Some describe being attacked or otherwise hostile behavior, but lots of times people describe these creatures as wary of humans but curious of our activities. Even that the creature is benign and shy, and that they didn't feel afraid of it and were sure it meant them no harm. These creatures are also varyingly described as living in groups or as lone creatures, so we can already see some of the problems starting to come up, you know?
Yeah.
There are also, it is worth noting, definitely, that there are similar creatures that occur in many First Nations peoples' folklore. So, such as the Wendigo, which apparently some people say is the same thing as Bigfoot, which
Lore-wise, I don't think that tracks.
No, it doesn't seem the same.
I think with lore,
I will just
a
say
Wendigo is specifically a
cannibalistic
curse
sort of, yeah.
that happens when in winter or something, when non-survivable conditions, the people turned to cannibalism, and then they were forever changed and cursed to be a Wendigo.
I will say
is what the lore is, I believe, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
I could be wrong.
Wendigo freaked me the fuck out for a while there, so
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you know when you're into like the horror and shit, when stuff freaks you out, you do more research into it.
Yeah, because fuck sanity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, I think that this is where I say we could be wrong, because in a lot of media, there's a lot of perversion of First Nations people's lore and history, and that is one of them that is commonly perverted. Yeah.
Some of the other creatures in folklore that are said to be very similar to Bigfoot include Yahoo, I'm pretty sure is how it's pronounced.
Yeah, the Yahoo.
Thank you. Because I was trying to figure it, I was trying to Google it.
I've seen that.
Yeah. The Oma, the Rougarou, the Box, the Witiko, which I think is similar to the Wendigo.
Can I just tell you how much I love the Rougarou? It's just a great name.
It is an excellent.
It's an amazing name, and I love everything.
It's fun to say.
Yeah.
So
that was my only comment.
Yeah.
I love Rougarou.
Most of these creatures are described as large creatures like men, but some are said to have special powers and characteristics, and many, such as the Ojibwe with the Rougarou, believe that these creatures appeared in times of danger or as messengers of warning, quote, telling man to change his ways, end quote. Many of the indigenous folklore of the North Americas and Himalayas describe similar creatures as peaceful, supernatural creatures that are intelligent and have spiritual powers. A lot of the indigenous peoples describe being watched from a distance or feeling watched and or hearing noises. But some tribes were also terrified of these creatures. So you can also kind of see where that dichotomy lives in the actual folklore. So some more specific examples of folklore, similar beings, include the, quote, stick Indians, end quote, of the Plateau tribes folklore, which describes a wide category of Bigfoot-like beings that can be hostile and steal salmon and whistle to get people lost. Sightings of these creatures are still reported today, which I thought was pretty interesting.
That is very interesting.
I always think it's interesting when there's something about whistling. When there is whistling in folklore, that is very interesting to me.
It's
I don't know why.
One, it's a very consistent theme.
Yeah.
And I think that freaks me out, to be perfectly honest. Because it's like, I can genuinely say, if I heard whistling when I was, like, alone by myself in the woods, I'd be like...
Oh, time to die. So the Sonoka of the Pacific Northwest traditions is said to be a giant hair-covered ogre that steals children and food.
Okay.
And the name Sasquatch is derived from some word in some indigenous language. It seemed like every source was...
inconsistent.
Yeah, was saying a different language. But one specific one was that perhaps it was a Salish word meaning wild men, but it's also attributed to other indigenous languages in North America and Canada, especially in the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. So,
interesting.
Settlers in North America started reporting sightings as early as the 1880s.
Oh,
and
interesting.
Yeah. And there were sections in newspapers in the 19th and early 20th centuries that were dedicated to miners, prospectors, trappers, and woodsmen, claiming to see wild men, bear men, or monkey men. Yeah.
I have a lot of hesitancy when it comes to this because it's like, I think it kind of all comes back to how we regard Greek, Roman, Egyptian, Aztec, Mexican, like any type of quote unquote mythology.
Yeah.
Is it's like a lot of that revolves around, well, they just didn't understand what they were seeing. And I think it's like not that these guys weren't smart. It was literally just they didn't know for sure what they were seeing, so they were using the best descriptors that they had.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, you know, because you're saying 1880s and this is when in the Americas.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, realistically, could that have been a part of a First Nations people's hunting party? And a lot of, like, some of that is just is, like, hiding and animal pelts. And so it's like, could that have been misconstrued? And I think that's possible.
Yeah, I think there's also something to be said for the stereotype that a lot of people in these professions tend to exaggerate. You know?
Fuck yeah. Oh my god, that's still true to today.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's ever... I mean, I hope most of you guys know at least a few people who are tradesmen, but man, people in trades, woo! God damn. And I'm saying that as someone who grew up around tradesmen and, like, honestly, this is going to sound super, like, judgy, and not super judgy, but, like, people who work in warehouses with each other, fucking hell. And that's, like, basically my childhood, is growing up in, like, warehouses with people who, like, bullshit all day long.
Yeah.
That is my life.
Well, and, like, the thing is that for a lot of stereotypes, a lot of times they come from somewhere. Whether it is a misunderstanding or because someone at some point in time made it true. So since then, people have occasionally found footprints, seen, Bigfoot, or take grainy photos and videos.
Why are they always fucking grainy?
Yes, we'll talk about that. So, a Bigfoot field researchers organization, I thought this was really funny, has recorded at least one sighting from every state besides Hawaii over the past 20 years. Besides Hawaii. Which, yeah.
Alright. I don't know why that's so funny to me. Also, I'd be very curious to know about, like, the Alaska sighting.
Oh, yeah. I haven't actually looked, but I have the link. Smithsonian Magazine said, quote, "If a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, it may not make a sound, but it seems someone will report that a Bigfoot knocked it over." Smithsonian Magazine is my guy.
You know what it's giving? It's giving Denver airport energy.
Yes. So with that, we're going to take a quick ad break before we get into the weeds. So, I want to talk about some events, or, you know, what people refer to as proof sometimes. Starting with sightings. In 1921, Henry Newman, who was a writer who was at the time recounting stories of British adventurers returning from Mount Everest. He wrote about some of these adventurers telling him of huge footprints that local guides said were left by Meto Kangmi. I'm sorry. Which roughly translates to man, bear, snowman. Newman is the one who in 1921 coined the term abominable snowman, because I guess he thought it sounded better. It doesn't. I'm sorry.
I mean, certainly more entertaining.
Yes. I mean, I'm sure that's what he was going for in reality. So in the summer of 1924, a group of 5 gold prospectors were staying in a cabin they made in a gorge along the shoulder of Mount St. Helen in Washington state. These 5 prospectors were Fred Beck, Gabe Lefevre, John Peterson, and Marion and Roy Smith, Roy being Marion's son. One day, they say that they saw a group of 4 about 7 foot or 2 meter tall gorilla men near their cabin. These creatures were said to have human-like strides, were covered in long black hair, had long straight ears that were about 4 inches long, had 4 toes, and each weighed about 400 pounds, which is 181.4 kilograms. Fred Beck said that he fired his rifle at one of them, hit it 3 times, and it tumbled off the cliff. Years later, he said it was somebody else who shot the thing. So...
I just am kind of curious about the assessment of the ear length and the, like, how close would they have to have been?
Yeah, I don't know.
And that kind of makes
They
me,
seem to have very specific
details.
Like there are some witnesses that are like, oh, I didn't get a very good look at him. He was about 7 feet tall, 150 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so the same night, the 5 prospectors woke to huge stones hitting their cabin, and they heard and felt huge bodies slamming against the door and the walls. Eventually, the creatures tore a hole in the roof through which they were able to reach in and target Beck, who was hit by 2 boulders and knocked out for 2 hours with one of them. The attack stopped when the sun rose and the creatures returned to the woods, and the men obviously dipped as soon as the coast was clear. The story caused a sensation, so the U.S. Forest Service investigated it. 2 rangers went with Beck out to the place he said the creature had fallen off of the cliff, but the body was not there even when they scrambled to the bottom. Because rangers be doing that kind of shit, you know?
Rangers be going that extra mile.
Or extra several miles, perhaps. So they went to the cabin also where the boulders were littered around, or where some boulders, I guess, were littered around, but the rangers were not convinced and felt that the men had placed them there. 14-inch or 35.6 centimeter footprints were also discovered, and when asked about them by a reporter, one ranger made one of these with the palm and knuckles of his hand to demonstrate how they believed that they were made. Yep. Other locals...
Did they say anything about the supposed hole in the roof?
I didn't see anything, which led me to believe that there was a hole in the roof. But what I will say is that what struck me about this story is that it is, like, something that I think exists, like, is a hallmark of liars, is when a story revolves around them. And this story revolves around Fred, you know? And there's one version of the story where he said that the creatures left after the sun rose and he shot at them again, which I was also kind of like, so he's the one who fired the initial shots. He's the one that they tore the roof down, tore the hole in the roof to target. He's the one who was knocked out for 2 hours. He's the one who drove them away.
Yeah. It's like, Alex, can I get implausible for 200?
Yeah. So, other locals did believe that the story was true anyway, and a lot of them described encounters they'd had with similar creatures, but largely the story is not really believed. Skeptics believe that either the group itself faked it or a group of youths were fucking with them. But frankly, I feel that's less realistic than them just faking it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, teenagers will typically go to certain lengths to do pranks, but most of the time you're not going to have ones who are going to be like, hey, let's dress up in a group and blah, blah, blah. Because especially then in the prospect of them getting, I don't know, shot at.
Yeah. So the gorge where this supposedly took place is now called Ape Canyon.
Great naming conventions.
Yes. In 1955, William Rowe was hiking in Mica Mountain in British Columbia when he claims to see a partially human and partly animal creature. In 1957, he swore an affidavit stating that it was 6 feet or 1.8 meters tall, covered in brown silver-tipped hair, had thick arms that reached down to its knees. And part of the affidavit has the part, quote, as I watched this creature, I wondered if some movie company was making a film at this place, and that what I saw was an actor made up to look partly human and partly animal. But as I observed it more, I decided it would be impossible to fake such a specimen, end quote. Earlier sightings of Bigfoot-like creatures are often described as, I hate this, quote, giant-sized indigenous persons, end quote. So this sighting is often cited as the birth of the modern Bigfoot. In 1957, also, Albert Ostman, a prospector, claims that in 1924, he was camping alone in the woods near Toba Inlet, British Columbia, and was, quote, scooped up in his sleeping bag by a Papa Bigfoot and taken to meet Mama Bigfoot and 2 Bigfoot children, end quote.
I'm sorry, when did we step into...
The Twilight Zone?
No. Goldilocks.
Yeah.
Was the actual phrasing Papa Bigfoot and Mama Bigfoot?
That's from the source that I used, but I don't know if it was directly from his
Because if so...
account. Yeah.
Okay.
So he claims that he was held captive for about a week and escaped when Papa Bigfoot fell ill after eating some of his chewing tobacco, which would do it. The description, though, is so similar to Rose's account, and he only came forward after hearing Rose's account. So a lot of people believe it is fake.
I wonder why.
Yeah. So that next year in 1958, that's when the Humboldt Times articles came out and Bigfoot became a sensation. And in 1967, Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson captured the most famous footage of Bigfoot in the same area where Roy Wallace and Jerry Crew found those footprints, in Bluff Creek.
How much you want to bet it was Roy dressed up if the timing adds up?
At first, this footage comes across as like someone having fun with a rented camera, which it was a rented camera. The first couple minutes are just shots of like foliage and men on horseback, and then it pans across to a creek and focuses on an upright creature about 80 feet or 24.4 meters away, which glances back at them and then lumbers into the woods. This is referred to as the Patterson-Gimlin film, and the creature in the film is said to be a female Bigfoot, which has been nicknamed Patty. And I did put in a video for us to watch to see how much we believe it. So you can see how shaky and grainy and poor quality it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. And there's longer... I couldn't find just the footage, you know? But how do you feel about that?
I mean...
What's your gut check?
It looks like a person in a suit.
It does. So...
Also because, like, to me, the arm movements are incredibly exaggerated.
Yes, that is true. Which...
Because they're very...
Yeah, which for...
swingy.
Like, if it was an actor, you know?
Yeah. it's like they're trying to emphasize that it's not human,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like it kind of makes you lean kind of more like it is.
Yeah.
Just personally, just saying that's kind of my assessment.
So it's kind of hard to tell due to the quality. If this is, a person in a gorilla suit or if it's real. This is believers that say this. But the famous loping Bigfoot walk has been a source of contention, and I think was also popularized by this video from my research.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, including Hollywood insiders, say that it is just a man in a gorilla suit. John Landis, who was the director of An American Werewolf in London, says that the suit was designed by John Chambers, who created costumes for the original Planet of the Apes. But Chambers denies having any involvement. Skeptics say that it walks too much like a human, but believers say that it keeps its knees bent while it walks, which is not like how humans walk, because we tend to lock our knees with each stride. Which I had to think about this, but I guess it's true. But if somebody was pretending to be a gorilla, I think they would keep their knees bent.
Yeah. Well, and also it's like, if technically it's like you are supposed to, like, as humans we tend to overstride. Like, I'm guilty of this because of my knee problems, and I was told that I lock my knees when I walk, and I lock my knees when I stand. So I've made an active effort to take shorter strides than I normally would as a result. And, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I just am not...
But additionally, some people will also say that since discovering our ape-like ancestors walked upright, this is how you would expect a similar creature to walk. And they also say that proportions of the face are about what you would expect to, and are similar to early humans. Or gorillas. And gorilla suits. Believers also say that it couldn't be a gorilla suit because the skin and fur ripple like a creature's moving flesh, which I'm going to be 100% honest with you, I do not see what they mean. But
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
Either.
But skeptics do say that this could be achieved with a water bag strapped to the abdomen under the suit, which I was like, bro, I don't believe that this is real and I believe you're stretching. But apparently that is actually very common in Hollywood to
Really?
strap a water bag on your abdomen under a suit to make it look more real.
I mean, I can see, like, how that would work, obviously, because if it's a strat, then it does work.
Yeah.
But it just seems, I don't know, very...
Yeah. And Hollywood effects artists do say that this is... They say it's obviously what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess if you did, like, a side-by-side comparison analysis, it certainly would lean.
Yeah. And people have, like, analyzed this thing frame by frame. Literally, that famous Bigfoot photo, with the walk and the looking over its shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Belle just made a face. That was excellent.
It's a pretty good impression, if I do say so myself.
The ones that my x-ray markers are. That people will refer to it by the exact frame that it is. But anyway.
That's so funny to me.
Yeah. Gimlin is extremely very sure that he saw Bigfoot, and I would speculate Patterson does as well. We'll touch on why I speculate that later. In the end, though, Brian Regal, who is a skeptic and associate professor of history of science at Keene University, says, quote, "You look at it and you see what you want to believe," end quote. Fair enough.
It's a fair assessment.
Yeah. Again, I think this will be a recurring theme in this. I don't believe in Bigfoot, but any of these people who have made these famous evidences are my heroes.
I mean, I think it's one of those things, I think we've talked about this before, where it's like, very much like what they said, you're going to look at a piece of evidence and you're going to see what you want to see. You're going to see the points that are relevant to you. Mm-hmm. We've also discussed you can't prove a negative. Technically, exactly. We can't prove that a Bigfoot doesn't exist.
Now, is that how the scientific method works? No, my friends. But we're going to touch on that in a lot more detail later. In 1994, Paul Freeman, who was a former U.S. Forest Patrolman, films what he says is a family of Bigfoots in Washington's Blue Mountain. The video, as per usual, is shaky and grainy, but believers swear by it. I couldn't find this footage, by the way. And it was helped along by other people who claimed to find footprints in the area. And in March of 1999, a man driving down I-5, heading to visit friends in Oregon, takes an exit to find dinner at around 10 p.m. I was not surprised to hear that he could not find a restaurant at 10 p.m.
I wonder why.
Yeah. So he pulls over to eat some car snacks and dozes off. As, you know, you do.
You do when you're road tripping.
Yep.
Most of us have been there.
We've all been there, although if you were a lone woman, I feel like you'd be less likely to do this.
Yeah.
But anyway, he wakes up to a loud thump, goes out to investigate like an insane person. You should have seen Bill's reaction there. There was a physical disappointment. Physical manifestation of disappointment.
Look, you don't need to do the white people shit.
Yes.
God.
But he did the white people shit. And he went out to investigate, sees a large rock on the hood of his car. In the first sane move he made on this night, he gets back into his car and turns it on. When the headlights come back on, he sees an about 8-foot-tall creature covered in thick, dark hair in the road in front of him. Creature watched him for a minute and then walked off into the woods. Which, my dude.
It's like, why would it put the rock on his car then leave?
Well, yeah, that was my whole thing, is like, why would it throw a rock at him? Presumably throw a rock at him, because that's what the story sounds like. Mm-hmm. And then he gets out of the car, it does nothing. He gets back in the car and throws a light on it, and it's like, huh. Okay.
Goodbye.
See ya.
I mean, because it's like, well, to me, it's like, okay, well, did he set it there, or what the fuck?
Yeah. My assumption when I hear about the loud thump is that it was thrown, the rock was thrown. Which that is something that is frequently attributed to big feet, Bigfoots, whatever.
Which plural. Is funny to me, because to me it sounds like, I mean, depending on the size of the rock, any amount of setting it down would cause that sound. And I feel like if it was thrown, it would have caused more damage, and they would have said something about it shaking the vehicle. Mm-hmm. Because if it's a very large rock, it would have dented the hood and caused it damage.
If I could ask this man one question, it would be, did you move the rock before you turned your car back on?
Yeah, because then it's also like, well, depending on the size, well, a large rock is subjective.
Yes. And it says a rock, not a boulder, so my interpretation of large rock is like, I mean, I'm gesturing, but like 4 or 5 inches, you know? In diameter. Oh,
wow. Our perceptions are very different, because I was thinking, like,
like a large rock versus a boulder, you know? Like. Okay. So Bella's thinking like a foot in diameter.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you see how subjective the term large rock is. That was something I was noticing, is people would say large rocks or large boulders were being thrown, and I was always kind of like, okay, but like, give me some numbers.
Yeah, like, give me numerical values, because then the prospect of that becomes, depending on its size, it's either going to make the story more or less plausible. Because in the one story that you mentioned earlier, it's like, oh, you know, they're 400-pound creatures. The capacity in which they're able to lift things is, in theory, greatly increased. Mm-hmm. So there's a certain amount of which people are able to move things. So depending on the size of the quote-unquote boulders that were being thrown, could that be something where, yeah, humans could have faked it, or is it, like, scientifically that's implausible that they were able to do that?
Yeah. But we don't got the data.
Exactly. And that's what makes me, like, struggle with these stories, because it's like, the more that you lend to this, it's like, it seems so much more implausible because
Yes.
you're not giving any scientific basis in numbers of verifiable data.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Anyway, obviously, I have an opinion about this. More
think
than
everyone
I thought I
has
did.
an opinion on Bigfoot, yeah.
More than I thought I did. Because it's like, well, I guess I was just like, oh yeah, okay, Bigfoot. But then it's like you start talking about, trying to pull data, and it's like, I mean, I lend toward science like a lot of different people, but it's just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of the aesthetic of Bigfoot.
Oh, God.
But...
oh, well, I mean, fuck, it's like me and conspiracy theories. It's like, I love conspiracy theories for the fact that they're conspiracy theories.
Yeah, like
it's entertaining.
My Bigfoot plushie up there. We got my hat on the floor somewhere. I've got my x-ray markers that are Bigfoot shaped.
I gave you a Bigfoot pencil.
Yeah, it's around somewhere.
It's somewhere.
Yeah. I'm a
not
fan. But realistically.
It's the ironic fan.
Yes. I'm a fan in the abstract sense.
It's a fan, but not a believer.
Yes.
Because those two are not mutually inclusive.
Yes. Hey, you guys, just wanted to come in at the end here just to tell you guys, turns out we recorded for 2 hours and 20 minutes, so we're going to make this a two-parter. So this first episode obviously is coming out today. The next episode will be coming out next week. Hope you enjoy Bigfoot. Thank you for listening to today's episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears, recorded and produced by Ollie and Belle.
Please check out all of our social media where we have additional information shared. You can find all of those links at our website at awmpa.com.
We'd love to hear your feedback for our podcast, so be sure to rate and review.
Tune in next week for another episode of A Wild Mystery Podcast Appears.